Mr. Putin. We want Russia back in Europe. Europe has always been a space where cultures touch, collide, intertwine, and enrich each other. Over the centuries, there has been an invisible thread between Europe and Russia, sometimes tense, sometimes vibrant, but always present. It was a thread that connected the Bolshoi ballet to the great stages of the West, that brought Russian musicians to the streets of Paris, Russian tourists to the squares of Rome and Prague, artists to Berlin exhibitions, students to European universities. That thread was felt in music, in literature, in art, in the way peoples looked at each other with curiosity, sympathy, and sometimes amazement. Today, however, that thread seems broken. And from this rupture was born the deep desire, perhaps romantic, perhaps nostalgic, to rediscover what once was. Mr. Putin, we want the beautiful and good people of Russia back. We want what used to be natural, to listen to Russian music in Europe without it being viewed through the lens of conflicts, to enjoy Russian art without political shadows, to see dancers, painters, actors, writers crossing continents without fear or barriers. Europe was, for Russia, an open stage. And Russia was, for Europe, a fountain of culture, emotion, and mystery. That is why the desire of Europeans to rediscover cultural Russia is not a superficial one. It is the desire to recover a part of the heart of Europe itself, because Russia, through its people and its creations, has always been a piece of Europe. We want, Mr. Putin, to step back into a world where beautiful Russian women fill European cities with their elegance, where Russian tourists stroll through Vienna, Madrid, or Bucharest with the same serenity they once did. We want to meet Russian families in European cafes, to hear Russian on the streets, to see Russian students in libraries and Russian professors at academic conferences. These are small things, but in them nestles the normality, the friendship, the simple rhythm of a Europe where no one looks at anyone with suspicion. Europe does not want distance. Europe does not want walls. Europe does not want the notion of Russian to be associated with fear or distrust. Europe wants what it had before, a living, free, human relationship. We want Russian vodka in our celebrations, not for the alcohol, but for what it symbolized. Conviviality, evenings, friendships, winter evenings when we sat at the table with people who came from far away, but felt close. We want to listen to the Russian songs that once resounded in taverns, in cultural clubs, at festivals, songs that made hearts vibrate regardless of nationality. We want the balalaika, we want Russian folklore, we want the great composers and performers. But most of all, we want the people. Ordinary people, with their smiles, their stories, their kindness. The Russian people have always been loved by Europeans. There was a mutual respect, a mutual fascination. And, despite everything that has happened, this affection has not disappeared. It has hidden, perhaps, in the silence between the news, in the timidity between the dialogues, in the pain between the generations. But it exists, alive and warm. Europe wants to be full of Russians again as visitors, not as political symbols, but as people. We miss seeing groups of Russian friends taking pictures in front of cathedrals, buying souvenirs, laughing on tour buses. We miss feeling that the world is big and beautiful, not fragmented. We Europeans too want to visit Moscow in peace and without fear. We want to walk around Red Square, enter Russian museums, worship in ancient churches, go to ballet and opera performances that have no equal in the world. We want to visit St. Petersburg with its high bridges, its white knights, its impressive museums. We want to feel the strong air of Russia again, its charm, its grandeur. Mr. Putin, give Russia back to Europe. Not as a territory, not as a policy, but as a human, cultural, spiritual presence. Give people back. Give exchanges, friendships, connections. Europe is not whole without Russia. And neither is Russia without Europe. The two are not natural enemies. They are two worlds that have inspired each other, that have influenced each other, that have formed side by side. History can create rifts. But the simple man, the man who loves music, art, travel, has never wanted these ruptures. There are no bridges that cannot be rebuilt. There are no distances that cannot be crossed. There are no silences that cannot be filled again with dialogue. That is why the desire of Europeans to rediscover Russia is not a whim. It is a recognition of the fact that the world is more beautiful when we are together. When Russians, Germans, Romanians, French, Italians, Spaniards, Czechs, Poles, all of them, feel part of something bigger than borders and disputes. A Europe with Russia is almost a cultural, educated, enlightened Europe. It is a Europe where young people read Dostoevsky and Chekhov without a lump in their throats, where Tchaikovsky's concerts resound in the Philharmonic halls without polemics. It is a Europe where we can applaud Russian dancers without wondering what burden they are carrying on their shoulders. We want Russia back not as a power, but as a friend. Not as a rival, but as a partner in culture, in civilization, in beauty. Mr. Putin, regardless of the political winds, regardless of the tensions of the time, something remains that cannot be cancelled: the connection between people. And people, be they Russian or European, have never stopped hoping for a world where they can sit at the same table, share the same joy, travel without fear, and recognize each other not as an adversary, but as a friend. This is Europe's desire. This is its nostalgia. And perhaps, one day, it will become reality again.